lab at Cambridge took skin cells from a 60-year-old woman. So primary fibroblast, these cells that support the skin, under the skin, and they rejuvenated it using one of many methods that you can rejuvenate cells with. And then the cells became 30 years old. So, well, the chromatin, the epigenome, which is modifications and molecules that are bound to DNA, the landscape looked as if the cells were 30 years old. So in vitro, so with cells in a dish, you can do that. If you can do it in the whole body, at some point I think we can. But the main
Immortal jellyfish.
yes, they also have an extreme regenerative potential. So they can cut off parts of its body, so you can move the damage to one part of the body and then just leave that part, flies off, and then it continues living, and then it can separate and then make new organisms. So it's very plastic, and it doesn't seem to die from biological aging, which is pretty cool. Yeah, people, even blood from pigs that was given to old rats rejuvenated the rats, so you can go from species to species even.
That's fucking crazy.
It is.
We'll come to Troy's oracle, where wisdom and wit entwine. Get ready for insights that shine.
Welcome to Troy's Oracle, Bjorn. I think you can tell me who you are and what you have been doing. Yeah,
I'm currently a PhD student at the University of Cambridge. So I'm working in a lab. I've been doing that for a year. And it's in the field of epigenetics and aging and age reversal, which I can talk more about. I'm originally Norwegian. So I did an undergraduate degree at King's College London in molecular genetics. And then I did some internships at the University of Oslo and Harvard Medical School, where I worked on age reversal and aging in the labs. And so now we're trying to find some new drug targets that we can exploit to manipulate the aging process, enhance our understanding of why we age. Because what I want to spend my career on eventually is to contribute to the work, which is a global effort right now, to extend our healthy lifespan as much as possible, so that you can reduce the risk of diseases and actually reverse diseases potentially.
So you want to investigate and find out how you can live long? How long? Is there any goal?
Well, so it's worth mentioning that the reason why myself and many other people want to do this is because we just enjoy life so much. We love it. And we think it's sustainable and actually a good thing to make people live longer and be healthier. So first of all, it's going to be a good thing for the world for many reasons that I can go into. But then the other thing is, it's just so beautiful. Life is so nice that why not extend it? So I don't think I would ever get bored of life, but it's I'm not sure when to put a number on how long I want to live, but I would want to have the choice. I would want to decide, no, I don't want to live anymore. So the optimal thing would have to be to have a therapy that you can take over and over again, reverse aging a few years, and then you keep taking it for as long as you want to. As long as it's sustainable, fair, ethical.
Okay, so like the possibility of always extending it, and then when you don't want to do anymore, you just stop.
Yeah. I think that's both a good thing and also a likely thing.
And what is the response from most people when you say that? Like, I've talked about similar things, and I often get like, you want to live forever. It's not good. The planet cannot sustain it.
Yeah.
What do you think? Like,
yeah, I've been thinking about this for 10 years, and I've been discussing it thousands of times with different people. Overall, I think it's clearly a net benefit, but of course there are some caveats. There are some open questions, some future discussions and political decisions that need to be the right ones. Because obviously, if you get a therapeutic that can make only a small proportion of the world live longer, for example, that would be unfair and it could lead to trouble. So yes, of course, eventually it needs to be an affordable, accessible therapeutic for most people. And I think if that's the case and you can minimize the troubles and risks, it's going to be a net benefit clearly, because one of the things that it can help with is actually giving a major economic boost. It costs so much money to take care of the elderly. So problem number one, people are living longer. So a person on average will have more diseases and would need more help from healthcare. So that it's getting more expensive. Number two, more people are older, so the proportion is older, right?
Mm.
And then number three, we don't get too many young people born, so an enormous proportion of young people will have to take care of the elderly. So all of these things can get solved to some extent by making the old people younger, right? And that way you can also save. There have been estimates where you can save trillions of dollars if you just make people live 1 year longer in good health, for example.
Yeah. Because that's what also a lot of people will say. I don't want to live long. I don't want to lay in a hospital bed for a lot of years. Like, is that the goal, or what is the goal?
No, the ultimate goal would of course be that a person can choose their favorite age, whatever that is. Mine would probably be somewhere between 25 and 30, but that's individual. You choose your favorite age and then you stay around that age. So that means if you're a 70-year-old, you would actually make your cells and tissues and systems in the body younger, so that you not only stop aging, but you actually get younger, so that you can do the things that you love and the things that you have stopped doing because you didn't have the energy or the muscles. And
I want
so
to be
on.
5, I think.
Well, I think that's a bit risky, because you need to remember, if you're going to rejuvenate your brain that much and you mess up with development, what if you lose your memories?
Yeah, it sounds crazy to be able to go back to 5. But do you think, like, is there serious people and you, of course, like, that think you can go back from 70 to 25 someday?
I think it's plausible, yes, but we can't make any promises. But actually, there was a study in 2022 around there where someone at Cambridge, a lab at Cambridge, took skin cells from a 60-year-old woman. So primary fibroblast, these cells that support the skin, under the skin, and they rejuvenated it using one of many methods that you can rejuvenate cells with. And then the cells became 30 years old. So, well, the chromatin, the epigenome, which is modifications and molecules that are bound to DNA, the landscape looked as if the cells were 30 years old. So in vitro, so with cells in a dish, you can do that. If you can do it in the whole body, at some point I think we can. But the main challenges to do that is, number one, currently you can't really deliver a gene therapy or a drug to all the cells in the body. Number two, you probably need to give different doses to different organs at different times. So you don't want to keep rejuvenating, right? You need to stop the therapeutic. For example, the gene therapy, it needs to only act for 7 days in the brain. So you need to target the brain for 7 days with a specific dose, and then you need to target different tissues. And at the moment, you can't really distinguish perfectly where you target the therapy.
But what do you target it with? Like, what drug is it?
So usually now people use viruses, or AAV. So the idea is that you can deliver this traversal cocktail, which is a set of genes, either via DNA or mRNA therapeutics, which, like, it's already done, it's already in the clinic, so it's possible. But if we can do that if we can rejuvenate all the cell types in the body, that's not known yet. How safe it is, it's not known, but it's being tested in mice at the moment, in monkeys. A few weeks ago, the biggest aging biotech company reported 25% lifespan extension in mice, which is remarkable. And there are now hundreds of studies that show that you can extend lifespan a lot and also make cells younger using a lot of different approaches. So the hope is that if you combine all of this, then you can clear away all this damage that accumulates when you age, because that's essentially what aging is, all this damage accumulating. But there are these, it's the health concern and the delivery concern that are the main things, because the rejuvenation field, the age reversal field is booming. So I don't think it's going to take too many decades until we have a good therapy. But
And it's also like it is a physical thing. Like our bodies are tissue. It is like if it's physical getting older, it's a process. There is a process happening. So you must be able to stop that process in the same way you stop everything else.
So you don't necessarily need to stop it, but you need to reset the damage that has been done. So, but yeah, you're
So how do you measure it
so you can measure aging
in a cell?
molecularly or physiologically or phenotypically. So you can just look at you can do something called a frailty test, where you look at the muscle behavior, mobility of the mice, for example, or humans. Or you can look at how tissues look, how cells look, morphology. Or more reliably, it seems, is to look at the molecules inside the cell. So you can do something called a multi-omic measurement, where you look at many different layers of molecules in the cell. DNA, RNA, proteins, modifications of proteins, lipids, metabolites, epigenetic modification, which are these tags that control DNA and gene expression, so what proteins are made. So if you look at all of these landscapes, so like all the molecules within these categories, and you look at the levels and the structure and the modifications, then you can compare that with what a human usually has at a certain age. So if I take a cell from you and I measure all these molecules, and these are quite similar in levels, for example, to a 22-year-old, then I would estimate your age to be 22. And then if I give you an age reversal therapy, and these molecules change in levels, and now you look 19 in terms of these molecules, then we would say that you're 19.
So the difference between me and a 90-year-old is the cell structure and the damage and how the proteins are made up and all those kind of things.
Yeah, there are thousands of different things that go wrong. Like almost everything that can go wrong. But not everything is causing aging. Some of it is just a byproduct. So for example, imagine an old man who works with glasses and a walking stick. You could imagine that like you can interpret that in two ways. You can say, okay, he's old, he's walking like that because he has a walking stick and old glasses. But really, he has the walking stick and glasses to protect against aging, right? It's to help him. And that happens in our cells and our bodies as well. Some of the things that happen are an effort from the body to help repair what's going wrong. So it's a response. But yeah, to answer your previous question, not only in the cells do things go wrong. So yeah, in the cells, as you say, you can, for example, accumulate byproducts. So when just by existing, by breaking down energy sources, such as glucose, you generate toxic metabolites that accumulate because repair is not perfect. Even by repairing things in the cell, you will generate byproducts. So actually waste that accumulates and will mess up things in the cell. And then it's a cascade, a snowball effect. One thing leads to the other. You will have deregulation. But then you need to remember that as cells communicate to each other via the blood or they're sending out signals, things get degraded, bone, muscle, these extracellular matrix structures, so these scaffolds around cells, they go wrong as well. Cells are dying, neurons are dying, and they don't get all of them don't get replaced. So a lot of things you have to fix, and while we're talking about this, as you probably can imagine, based on what I just said, is you probably need to replace some of the organs. Because if cells are dying and you're losing tissue, if things are degraded and falling apart and misplaced, you probably have to replace an entire heart at some point, right?
Yeah, like we already do sometimes.
Exactly.
Okay, so it's not a process that happens from the body within. It's not like a planned process. I have to get older. It's more like the cells are getting hit by all kind of things and the body is trying to repair it, but at some point the engine is so old that it starts to fall and break. What?
That's a good point. It's both internal and external. And yes, so it's based on what you eat, what you breathe, lifestyle, yes, and also just existing, because the cells are not perfect, as you say, which is the internal part. Your body is not built to last longer than a few decades, because it only cares about reproducing. And then evolution didn't care about keeping your body like maintained perfectly. But then you also have so that's the internal damage. But then it's a discussion of, is this programmed or is it random? This is what you're talking about now, and we actually don't know. But in the last year or two, there have been a lot of interesting publications, especially on the epigenome, that have revealed that some changes seem to be programmed, some changes seem to be stochastic, so random.
What is the epigenome for people who don't know?
So that's the thing I mentioned. It's called, it literally means above the genome. So DNA is the recipe for proteins. Proteins do the work in the cells. So the DNA has designated regions that encode an RNA, which encodes for a protein. And then you need to control when to express this RNA, when to make the protein, and if it should be made in the first place. For example, a skin protein shouldn't necessarily be made in the brain. So that's one of the things that needs to be controlled, and it needs to be expressed in certain situations. Maybe when another gene is expressed. And how do you control that? So the cell has a lot of mechanisms, which are called epigenetic mechanisms. So the epigenome is the collection of molecules and processes that control the genes. Okay.
So that's some genes on and off. So like the brain cells doesn't produce bone, for example, because every cell can produce everything, but you don't want to produce everything. You just want to produce what the cell is made for. So that's what the epigenetic changes regulate.
Yes, the epigenome is dynamic. It changes. The DNA is relatively static. You have changes and DNA changes, but every cell in your body has the same DNA, except some errors. But the epigenome is very different. So you can look at the epigenome in a cell, and you can say what cell it is, and you can change the epigenome, and then the cell type changes. So you can make a skin cell to a neuron by changing the epigenome.
Wow.
And the epigenome gets completely messed up as you age, gradually, but not only gradually, because it's quite interesting. Some parts of the epigenome doesn't change much until suddenly at some point in your life, and it changes a lot. That suggests a programmed thing, right? And then some parts of the epigenome changes in a way as you would expect with entropy, so just random change. So there seems to be a mix. And it's been clear as well in the last few years that you start to age at the point of fertilization. So some people think you start to age in your early 20s or after puberty, but actually, when you look at the epigenome, you see that you start to accumulate damage as soon as you are a fertilized egg. And then a completely amazing thing that was discovered a few years ago in 2021 is that the early embryo gets younger. So this actually is related to most of the things we've been talking about. Nature knows how to make an organism younger. And this is a little thought experiment. So imagine your mother, okay? Where if she was 40 when she had a baby, well, you, for example.
28, but yeah.
Okay, even 28. Do you think her egg cells were like perfectly healthy, not aged, or do you think they were aged?
We can take 40, so it's a bit more extreme.
Okay.
I would guess that the eggs, they must have aged a bit if they are in the body for 40 years. Okay. They must get the same damage from the sun and everything. Not the sun especially, but that's more the skin. But I would guess there would be accumulated damage, yeah.
Okay. What about sperm cells, which are produced from the sperm stem cells, the gonad?
I would say they are produced all the time, and they only live not for too long, so they will accumulate damage, but then they will probably get used or peed out, and then there will be new ones every day.
Yeah, but so do you think the sperm cells will be aged then?
Well, they age, but they only live for a week or 2 weeks or something, yeah.
Yeah, so it seems that the egg cell and the sperm stem cells age.
Mm-hmm.
So the egg cell and the sperm cell will be older for every generation, in principle, okay? So how is it that every generation makes a perfectly young, healthy baby if the egg cell and the sperm stem cell ages? Have you thought about that?
Well, isn't there a higher chance for like children with problems the older the woman is, for example?
That's true. But doesn't it sound like now that every generation will look older because the egg cell accumulates damage? Because if your mother got a daughter, her egg cells are just going to get even older, accumulate damage. But that doesn't happen. So there is an age reversal event early in embryogenesis, early in development, at around day 6.5, 7.5 after fertilization, when the egg cell fuses with the sperm cell.
7.5 what?
Days after fertilization, after fusion of the egg cell and the sperm cell. Aging, the embryo becomes younger, which is amazing. So nature has a recipe to make the embryo younger. And the thought why that happens is just what we've been talking about, that the egg cells and the sperm stem cells get older. And then you need to fix that for the new generation to be healthy and viable. And now labs are trying to understand how this happens so that you can maybe learn from nature and then apply this to a grown-up human and make the grown-up human younger.
Okay, that's very interesting. Of course, like if a 40-year-old woman gets a child, it's not like the child lives 20 years shorter, and when the child is 10, she's already have wrinkles and everything. That makes sense, but then I also like think like all the cells, they are built new, and like when you're building all the cells on top of it, so maybe it doesn't matter that much. You understand?
You're building new cells on top of it. Yes, sure. So you will have
like my skin cells of a newborn baby is still new cells because they just get produced.
That's true. So it comes from the fertilized egg, right?
Yeah.
So you will have dilution of the damage, potentially. That's correct.
Yeah.
Yes. But there are a lot of changes that happen, and you clearly see that damage goes down.
Okay.
So there is something more going on. So, but yeah, it seems to be a mix between you dilute the damage. Maybe some of the cells take up more damage than the other ones when the embryo gets bigger and proliferates. But it also... what seems to be the case is that there is enhanced repair. So repair goes up. And something happens in those, like we don't know what it is yet, but seems to be something happening when all of these developmental processes goes on that makes the cells younger, because there's like a widespread change in the epigenome. It gets much younger. We talk about up to several tens of years. So it seems to be, and it's like in a small time period as well. So it seems to be something more. Than something.
Yeah. So the eggs, for example, have got a lot of like aged, and it has a lot of damage maybe, and suddenly between 6.5 and 7.5 weeks, it just repairs so much of it.
Yes, and then it goes up until you die.
And then it goes up until you die.
Yes.
Okay. That's very interesting.
I think it's super exciting, and this is something I'm going to spend a big part of my life exploring. I think because most people are caught up in studying old model organisms or genes or looking at what goes wrong. But I think if we study how nature has solved the problem, potentially, or a part of the problem, then that could be a quicker way. Because then you just copy what the nature does. You don't need to understand everything about aging. It's like a shortcut.
Yeah, and after 7 weeks, how much of how it developed is it?
So it's actually then the ball of cells. It's called
But are there different cells?
Yes. Well, you have the inner cell mass and you have the trophoblast around. So it's a ball of cells with a hollow space inside, and then the inner cell mass. And then at the point of rejuvenation, the process of gastrulation starts. It's around that time. So the ball of cells goes it fuses to the uterine wall. Okay. And then the inner cell mass will then start to separate into 3 germ layers, which then differentiate to different cell lineages, and you have different cell types. So it's just before this big structural change happens.
And then if you can figure out what is the signal that rejuvenates the egg, the idea is kind of, if you're very lucky, you can make that signal into a pill, and you eat the pill, and then suddenly the whole body just rejuvenates 5 years.
Yes, but I think it's going to be more in principle, but it's going to be more complicated than the pill. Yeah, so like if I have to make a prediction, I think you need to replace tissues, and you need to do something like mimicking what nature does, maybe with the gene therapy or epigenome therapy. and then you need to engineer the cells. So you probably need to go in physically and move things around, remove damage, like kind of like a cleaning up waste, and then you probably have to make cells better because people like biology is wonderful, but it has a lot of mistakes. So to stop your body from just completely deteriorating, because you can't fix everything with age reversal, you probably need to optimize it a bit. So make some super cells and super tissues.
And why haven't evolution already made this so we live forever?
Why that hasn't happened?
Yeah,
it has no reason to. But there are two organisms actually that don't seem to die. That seem.
First, why do humans not? Why there's no need? Like.
Because of evolutionary pressures. So, the purpose of a human, from a biological standpoint, is to propagate the DNA, the genetic information, and the way to do that is to get an offspring or more. So, a lot of the biology is optimized to maximize the chance of having an offspring, and when that's done, the job is done. And when a person has reached maturity, and after a few years, the aging starts to accelerate. So there seems to be a lack of selective pressure to keep the human body healthy after a certain amount of years, because then presumably the body has already reproduced. Okay, so there's something called antagonistic pleiotropy, where there seems to be mechanisms, for example, gene expression in the body that have good functions when you're young, for example, to build muscle and to have a lot of energy. But then when you get older, those are actually detrimental, and it increases risk of disease and so on. So it's going to be hard for your body to suddenly invent a way to live longer and rejuvenate. But there's no point.
Yeah. And there's no pressure for it because your child is already born when you are 40. You already have, 5 children. So there's no need, there's no pressure of nature to keep you alive. And maybe still it's important, like they will still try to keep, like nature still keeps you alive until you're maybe 60. Then you can still like teach the next generation. But there's no pressure because the children are already born and they're already moving on. Yeah, I definitely see. And you talked about 2 organisms that...
Yeah, so that the Hydra and the immortal jellyfish.
Immortal jellyfish?
Yes. Those have an extreme regenerative potential. So they can cut off parts of its body. So you can move the damage to one part of the body and then just leave that part. Flies off. And then it continues living. And then it can separate and then make new organisms. So it's very plastic. And it doesn't seem to die from biological aging. Which is pretty cool. Yeah, people are studying this.
So it just takes all the damage that has accumulated and then just puts it to one part of the body and then out?
Yes.
Like taking a big shit or something and then taking all the old cells out and then it will just keep living?
Essentially.
You think that could be possible in humans? Like put all the things into like one big lump or something, your breast or something, and then whoop.
No, I haven't thought about that. I think that's going to be hard, but I still think we can learn from the regeneration potential that they have, because they have a very good ability to replace parts. We don't. We're really bad at it. Like we have the liver that can regenerate, and other tissues can make new cells to some extent. But other animals are much better than us, and it costs energy, it seems, to regenerate. So people are trying to make humans regenerate tissues.
How much energy do you think it would take for like a 70-year-old to regenerate? Like, would he have to eat a lot if his body suddenly goes into like a state of regeneration?
Well, I guess. But I was more thinking the cells, like they wouldn't. Yeah, but it's doable. It's doable. But there's always a trade-off between spending energy and then repairing damage, usually in the cells. They usually mainly do predominantly one of them. So it seems that humans have prioritized to keep the cells, healthy and clear away damage, rather than focusing on rejuvenation and regeneration.
And is this why fasting is healthy? Because then you put your body to the other, you put the cells into the other state?
That's one of the things, yes. Caloric restriction, so eating a lower amount of food, or doing intermittent fasting where you eat within a limited time period per day, or in a week, for example, then you decrease anabolic processes. So, for example, growth and proliferation, building molecules in the cells, and you activate repair pathways, for example, DNA repair, protein repair, and replacement of organelles. So exactly.
Why does the body go into this state? Known?
Well,
of course, it won't build muscle if there's no food. It will start maybe try to use the resources that there are available.
Yes, because food wasn't always, or food is not always readily available for an organism. So the idea is that when the cells don't sense that they get as much food as they should, then it makes sense for them to to repair damage and to prepare for a time of adversity, because the cells can't know how long they will be without food, right? So rather than focusing on building and preparing for mating or getting a partner and bringing up a progeny, it's better for the cell to then repair and then become stronger for a longer time without food, right?
Yeah, and okay, makes sense. And is there any studies on fasting, and like does it work? I've just heard it works.
It's impossible to say at this point if it will make you be healthier for longer or living longer, but there is a lot of evidence that suggests so. Model organisms such as mice, C. elegans, which is a worm, a nematode worm, and Drosophila, which is the fruit fly, they live longer and they're healthier for longer if they eat less or if they eat in a time restricted period. In humans, you can't really easily do a study over a lifetime, and
it takes a lot of years.
Yeah, and also humans don't always follow the study strictly. They do all kind of other things in the study, but the health parameters seem very promising. The risk of disease appears to go down in people who start to do intermittent fasting. You have better sleep, better physical performance, better memory, and actually there was a study last year which showed that quality of life increases when you do intermittent fasting. Of course, there are caveats with these studies, but usually there are positive results. So unless you're pregnant or very old, or you have some underlying disease, then intermittent fasting is a good way to go. It's one of the few things you can do that can have a big impact.
And intermittent fasting, what intervals are most beneficial?
So what's usually studied is an 8-hour eating period and then 16 hours with no food. But you can drink tea, coffee, water in those 16 hours, but preferably there should be no nutrient intake. Then 12 hours has some effect as well in mice and in humans when you eat in a 12-hour period. If it's shorter, that hasn't been studied much. I've tried 3-hour eating window, 8-hour and 12-hour. Now I'm doing an 8-hour window. That's the most common one. And then some people do, for example, 3 days without eating. As actually a couple of scientists I know do that, because after 3 days, the repair pathways go crazy. They seem to maximize peak because it takes some time for them to kick in. So they do a 3-day fasting, 2-3 days, even sometimes more, every few months.
Yeah, I've tried 3 days fasting. It's difficult. It's so difficult. Your body just thinks about food all the time. But yeah,
that's the thing.
Yeah, because I've also heard like if you if you eat for 8 hours every day, it's still you don't go into like ketosis, and you don't use all your energy from your liver and things, so you don't get the same benefits.
Yes, well, yeah, that's true. You can still get into, you start producing ketone bodies, so you get a part of the effect, but just not to the same extent.
Okay, yeah. I'd like to try to do longer fasts, but they're definitely very difficult. Is there anything? Okay, yeah, and on the mice, I just heard once when that, like, if they gave them half the amount of food or something, they live for 30% longer, which is quite a lot. I don't know if you know about that study. Like where they got less food and then they live for 25-30% longer.
Well, yeah, there are a lot of those studies.
They all showed us kind of the same thing.
Yeah, but also when you give less food to the mice, they also generally often get more vulnerable to diseases, so infections and things like that. So sometimes they actually die earlier because they have too little nutrients to keep the immune system working fine, and then they can become slower. And like caloric restriction isn't as common.
Okay.
There are some risks associated with that because it's easy to get a deficiency.
So it's best to like still get the amount you want, but just take intervals where you don't eat, for example.
Yes, and also eat little in each meal. It's better to spread it out. And then of course what you eat is very important as well, right?
Yeah, I think we can get to what you eat. But is there anything? Okay, fasting can help you live longer. Is there any other like what is the main focus in the development now? What are people most excited about? Is there any drugs? Is there any special foods? Like what?
Yeah, well, exercise seems to be the most powerful thing. Sleep, exercise, and food. And if you do those right, which is like the fewest people do all of those, it's hard, right? Less than like only a few % of people who get prescribed exercise actually do it, like from the doctors. It's hard. People get excited about some supplements and drugs such as metformin, rapamycin, NAD, and then supplements such as berberine, taurine, because and omega-3, because some of these extend lifespan in worms, for example, in flies and mice, and they make them healthier for longer. And then people who eat them or consume them, they have lower risk of diseases and longer health spans. But all of these, like, it's difficult to say how much effect those have. There's nothing magical at this point, nothing that would have an enormous impact. But if you do everything right, then very good things can happen. There have been some studies showing that if you eat much plant-based food, even if you're a vegetarian or vegan, you're predicted to live longer and be healthier for longer. So people are quite excited about eating a lot of plant-based food. And then there is heat and cold exposure. Some people swear to that, but the studies are contradictory. It's difficult to conclude anything strong. But really, there is not one food source or one drug or one supplement at this point that seems to have an amazing effect. I'm a bit skeptical to single supplements and single molecules because, as we talked about, aging is so complex. There are hundreds or thousands of things that go wrong. So just by giving one molecule, how do you expect a lot of these things to suddenly go in the right direction? You need something more powerful. You need to engineer the cells. So I'm much, much more excited about the research that would come out. But I think people would benefit, and it's fun. So to optimize your health. So by reading some research articles and looking at what makes animals healthier for longer, live longer, taking supplements is a good thing. And ensuring that your vitamin levels are high. Scientists generally think it's important to take frequent blood tests, for example.
Yeah, to follow. Yeah, so exercise is the most important. What you eat is the most important. And then your mental health probably as well. Yeah, that's what everybody says, but that's not so exciting as like taking some magic pill and then getting like older and whatever. Yeah.
Yeah, but sleep, for example, that's
well.
it is a fun challenge. So like the few amount of like very few people go to bed at approximately the same time and wake up at the same time and get 7 to 9 hours of sleep and then before wind down. But if you do that, then that can have very big effects on your biological age potentially, which is how old you actually are.
Yeah, I also think it's very fun to try to optimize like my health. It is like a game. You start somewhere. Some people start very bad. Some people start quite good. And then you can just like, I train like here. It works well. If I eat this, I become my body has a nicer vibe. It's more. I'm more light. And
that's the thing.
If I love to take a sauna sometimes, and you say maybe cold heat exposure and cold exposure, the studies are contradictory. Difficult words.
Yes. Yeah. Well, in at least in model organisms, when you stress the animals a bit, that seems to be beneficial for lifespan and health span. So either seems to be helpful, but there is more evidence to suggest that heat exposure, so sauna, is beneficial. There's just more studies on that. And then related to what you said, I think especially if you have some friends or family who are also excited about improving performance and well-being, decreasing risk of diseases, things like this, it's all linked together. As you say, when you exercise or when you eat the right food, not only will you increase your chance of being healthy for longer, but also you get these amazing effects on your mood, your energy levels, and you feel good. Like it's like a game. You make habits and you succeed and you read and you learn and you share it with people. It's not that hard actually. It seems to be more important to choose what you don't eat rather than what you eat. So as long as you stay away from the bad food, then there's so much good food that you can eat.
Like all the chocolate you gave me just now.
Yeah, well, that's for enjoying life, which is super important as well. You need to you need to go wild sometimes and go out of your habits.
Yeah, I also started optimizing my health in all kind of ways, and I eat a lot of salad and olive oil and all kind of things. Have you seen the millionaire who started trying to age reverse himself?
Brian Johnson.
Yeah, Brian Johnson. Do you have any thoughts on like what he's doing?
Yeah, I was on a call with him a few weeks ago, and he shared his latest habits and so on. I think he's doing a lot of the right things. It's very good in general what he's doing, and he's actually informing the aging research field a lot. He's collaborating with some scientists because he's testing things that most people don't test or they don't dare to test. So you can't really trust that, for example, a benefit that he sees from having a supplement, taking a supplement or doing a lifestyle change, that's really beneficial for everyone. But it's worth following what he's doing. Yes, he has many good habits, such as limiting like a certain set of food. He's eating a lot of food that is like based on research. It seems to be very good. He has some strict principles, such as exercising this amount every day, doing this amount of strength exercise, doing interval training, because if you really stress your body hard with exercise, that's a good thing. And he has this thing that he goes to bed within a 5-minute period. So like every night, he sleeps a lot. So
yeah. He's like
inspiring.
I follow him on X, and he always posts like, go to sleep and remember to sleep, and today I'm going to sleep and not enjoying like this evening where the people go out, and he promotes sleep over everything else. And I also like, if I don't sleep, I'm destroyed. I sleep 9 hours every day and feel so good. But I generally get the feeling that you don't think that there's a pill that's gonna solve the problems like of aging. You more think like you have to engineer it. Can you try to like explain what's the difference between taking a pill and engineering your body like?
Sure. Yeah. So I think you need a combination of things. The thing that a drug or a supplement or a food or a molecule, it will, when it comes into your cells, when you eat it, goes into your bloodstream eventually and then into your cell, and then it will potentially activate or deactivate some molecules, and then that has some effects downstream. But then you're not changing anything profound in the cell. Like with most of these supplements, you're just maybe increasing the repair a little bit of one specific part of the cell, not even in the whole body probably. So to have a profound impact, to actually do age reversal, you need to do something about all the things that have gone wrong, right? So you need to target many things. And if you want like a limited therapy, you probably have to do something like the embryo does after a week. So you can actually do something remarkable. So in 2006, there were 4 Yamanaka factors that were discovered by a Japanese researcher called Shinya Yamanaka. And with those 4 genes that are called for 4 proteins, you can make cells younger. This is how the 60-year-old skin cells became 30-year-old. This is the most exciting thing at the moment. So then you express these 4 genes in the cell. That's engineering, because then you're introducing something profound. You're making the cell produce 4 proteins, and those 4 proteins have a lot of activities in the cell. But these proteins have some safety concerns, and the rejuvenation is not as big as we want. And yeah, there are some more mechanisms that we need to explore there, but we can learn from them and make them more powerful. It's very promising.
How do the Yamanaka cells proteins work?
So they actually shut down a lot of genes. It's interesting. So if you have a skin cell, the Yamanaka factors will essentially make the skin cell not a skin cell anymore if you just let them keep doing what they're doing. So first, they will shut down genes, which are the code for a protein, that are important for the skin cell identity. So if we're looking at a skin cell, then the genes that are important for its function and its structure and how it looks, they will decrease in expression. So the activity of these genes will go down, so you will have less proteins that are important for the skin cells. Then after some time, when these genes and the regulatory elements are closed down, then you will start to express, so make proteins that are important for stem cells. So the cell is turned into a stem cell, which is remarkable. And then what people got very excited about is using these stem cells in therapies, because then if you make a skin cell into a stem cell, then you can make the stem cell into a neuron, right? And then you can maybe do a regenerative therapy for people with Alzheimer's or just an old brain. And what was found is that the age of the stem cell is 0. So no matter how old the skin cell was, it's reversed in age when it goes to stem cell. But you don't want to have stem cells in your body, these induced pluripotent stem cells is what it's called, because these stem cells resemble what's found in the embryo in early development. So they have the potential to differentiate and go through a developmental program. So if you add the Yamanaka factors for enough time, you get stem cells, and then these can actually turn into cancers, because when that happens in a grown-up body, unexpected things can happen. So what people are doing, they only let the Yamanaka factors act for some days, up to 13 days. And then the skin cell gets younger, but it stays a skin cell. So that's the idea.
Okay. So you can actually activate these proteins, and then you can make like a neuron into a stem cell again. So it just goes all the way back to where it started. Yes. And then you can make like a neuron into a skin cell or a heart cell or whatever, a muscle cell.
Correct. Yes, you can do that. So that's a promising thing to do for stem cell therapies, regenerative therapies. And actually, when you regenerate things like the kidney or the bone marrow, so if you take stem cells out, if you take cells from a human, make them into stem cells, and then you differentiate them into a kidney or bone marrow, for example, and you transplant it into a model organism, that organ is going to be younger. So that's another approach.
Okay, so like you can take these younger, you can make these cells younger, and you could. What happens if you just like put them into your blood, like inject them into you?
Well, yeah, that's an interesting thing, because actually when you take blood from a younger organism and put it into an older organism, the older organism gets younger. So it seems to be that younger cells put into the blood.
Sounds like a vampire thing.
Yeah, well, people do this.
They do this?
They do it. Even Brian Johnson, who you mentioned, he does this. Well, he did this, at least. He got blood from his son. So
and gets it to himself.
Yes. And it makes sense, because not only will you dilute the damage that you have in your blood, you will also get all the good molecules and cells from the young organism. So even blood from pigs that was given to old rats rejuvenated the rats. So you can go from species to species even.
That's fucking crazy.
It is.
So you can take like a young like, I don't know, pig, and then you can put it into a rat that's old, and then the rat will live longer, or will just have it will just seem younger.
So in that study, which was a few months ago, I think, the rats, they did get younger. I can't remember if they lived longer, but usually when you see a profound rejuvenation, so age reversal based on these clocks that we mentioned, when you study the molecules on different layers, then they do live longer. So we can check that if they live longer. But like, regardless, I think it's very interesting. And if we test that in humans, I'm sure someone would be volunteer. I wouldn't be surprised if we see a lifespan extension based on that.
Or like just like having these factors in like a cream, and then you just put the cream on your skin, and the skin will start to rejuvenate, but you don't want to do it too much because you don't want to end with stem cells in your whole skin.
Exactly, yeah.
But just a little bit. That sounds very exciting, yeah.
Yes, and actually even saline, so just salt water, if you put that into an old organism, that will make it younger because you're diluting saline.
And what is
just salt water?
Salt water. So if you put salt water into old organism, it will rejuvenate it a bit.
Yes, like you're just diluting the blood.
And then okay. So you don't want to have too much blood or what?
Well, it's more that in an old blood system, you have all these accumulated old cells and molecules. And if you're giving saline, the idea is that you're spreading that out, so you don't have as much damage. You can't do that many bad things.
I also heard that it's very good to give blood, like donate blood, because if you donate blood every half a year or every 3 months, half a liter, like over 3 years, you donated your whole blood and your whole body has produced the blood again. And in that way, you can get out a lot of damage. Is it true?
Yeah, it has good health effects. The effect on lifespan and health span, which is the time you're healthy, that's not known, as far as I'm aware. But
what's the difference between lifespan and health span?
So lifespan is the amount of years you're on Earth alive, and then health span is the amount of years where you're healthy without any major disease. You don't suffer from a disease. And you don't suffer from age-related decline in energy. So you're living without suffering, essentially. So you have general good health. And that's what we want. So we want to increase health span. Because if you only increase lifespan, you might prolong this period when you are in bad health. So one cool thing we haven't talked about, which is very linked to this, is that in some centenarian populations, so these blue zones in the world, in Italy, Greece, Japan, and so on, they have the highest proportion of people who live beyond 100. Some of these people have an extreme health span, like it could be over 100 years old, 100 years, so that they don't get any major disease, and they have the health of a 70-year-old until they are more than 100. And then the health span is almost as long as their lifespan. Only in the last few months or years, they get diseases like heart disease, Alzheimer's, and cancer, and then they just goes rapidly down, and then they die. So you want health span to match the lifespan as much as possible.
Yeah, because now, like, the medical field is mostly concerned about, oh, you got a disease, let's try to fix the disease and keep you alive. But often people end up in hospitals for like 10 years before they die. Like my grandmother was in hospital for 3 years and just suffering. And they kept her alive, but not very fun.
Exactly. And the problem is, even if you get rid of one disease, if you cure one disease in a grandmother, then the likelihood that she's going to get another disease the next year is very high. You don't really do much to the general disease burden in the individual just by fixing one disease by one disease, because the underlying cause is aging, right? So almost all diseases are affected by aging, and the main cause of all the major diseases is aging. So that includes Alzheimer's, cardiovascular disease, diabetes, cancer, Parkinson's, things like this. So if you're 80 years old, you have on average 8 diseases, right? And your doctor won't do much to prevent these diseases. That's one thing. And they won't do much to treat them as a whole, like because they're very connected. And they definitely won't treat them by treating aging as an underlying cause. They will do something to reduce the symptoms, maybe fix the disease, but then you die of something else next year potentially, right? So yeah, it's like actually quite an old healthcare system that we have. It needs to renew in many ways.
So instead of focusing on trying to cure the disease, you should try to cure the thing that creates the diseases, exactly. Which is aging. So that's the new development. It's like instead of just focusing on keeping people healthy when they get sick, Why not just prevent them getting sick?
That's it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because when you actually slow down aging, or you stop it, or you delay it, or you reverse it, in modern organisms, they have much lower risk of disease. They get diseases much later.
How long do you think we will live? Like, if you should guess. Or maybe do an interval.
Us, like you and me.
Yeah. I'm 22, you are?
I'm 23.
23?
Yeah.
We have quite a lot of years before, like, it's too late.
Yes, I think, like, if we keep having the adventures that we are having, I think we will die when we're like 30, 40. But if that doesn't happen, I think if we can afford the therapies when they come and we keep staying healthy, we don't do too many stupid things, I think we could be actually in the generation that can choose when to die. So I think definitely we would have a good chance of living a few hundred years. Some scientists, like in public, say they think we're going to be 20,000 years, so we're going to live forever. Some scientists say it's impossible to say at this point, and it really is impossible. Like, anything can happen in the next few years. Very hard to imagine what's going to happen. But there is, for example, Altos Labs, a biotech company, which have they got $3 billion in funding. There are now
$3 billion.
There are now hundreds of companies, hundreds of labs focusing on this. The interest is just growing because people get so excited about it. Aging is top 2 problems in the world, like together with global warming. You have other important problems, of course, but politicians as well, people in all kinds of jobs are getting so excited, and legislations are changing. So there's so much going on in the right direction that I think things can happen very, very quickly. Another company promised to have the first age reversal therapy on the market by 2030, which is not so long until that's happening. So I think the most important thing now is learners, like for the average person, try and learn a bit about how the field works, and then if you get excited and join, reach out to anyone in the field and help, or at least save some money for the therapeutics and have a good lifestyle. Try to survive until the first therapeutic comes, because there is this thing called well, I need to talk about the term, but if you survive until the first powerful therapeutic, then that's going to give you a few extra years, and if you survive those few extra years, there's going to be another therapeutic, and then it's like you get some extra years, and you get a bigger chance every time to get closer to the amazing combination that's going to do very big things to your biological age.
Yeah, I heard that it's never been more important to be healthy, because you could be, those years you will live longer if you're healthy, could be the years where you get the new technology. And when they first get some little, if they first get one therapeutic to prolong life, just go so fast. Suddenly, they will develop on top of that. So, I could see, you're from inside the field. I just follow it a bit. It's a very fast growing field. So many people don't even know about it. And I'm sure people will think what? Live forever? But I seriously also believe that could be a possibility. Especially living over 100 years, all of us. So I would say people should stay healthy.
Mm-hmm. I agree. It's a good point. Yeah, there's no rule anywhere in biology or society that says you can't try to extend lifespan a lot and that it doesn't work. There is nothing in evolution as well that says that an organism can't live forever. It's there are these organisms that live for thousands of years. You have trees that live up to 10,000 years, right? And you have whales that live 300 years. And that's a good start, I would say, for human. And as you say, it's strange that so many people don't know about the aging field and how things are developing. There are so many other distractions in the world. Yeah, a lot of other things that people care about. But a lot of stuff is happening, and it's getting extremely popular, especially within the science field. People from all kinds of different fields, like development or Alzheimer's, cancer, they get very excited about aging, and people are recruited all the time, and they start to adapt the research to aging. Even doctors get interested. There are now popping up longevity clinics everywhere. and podcast people talk about longevity, influencers. It's a lot of things are happening. It's it's an amazing time to be alive.
So yeah, and you're just in the middle of it.
Yeah.
And what is your plan? What do you want to focus on next?
So I have 3 more years of my PhD in Cambridge, and then I have a few options then. So I'm looking for the path that can give me the best opportunity to have the highest impact possible. I'm driven by improving human health and the future of the world rather than money or fame, right? So I've been thinking very hard about it. I think as of now, I would try to make a company as soon as I can. I have a few business ideas and a few potential partners as well and investors. So after my PhD, I think I'm going to start to make a company or more after a while maybe, and then see if my ideas are viable, if they can lead to any exciting therapeutics. Then plan B would be to join one of the many biotech companies and then have a group in those companies, because there are these hybrid companies now where you can do academic research, or similar to academic research, and company research in the same company. So you can have a mix of exploration and then company-driven projects. And then the third idea that I have is to start a lab in academia, but you can also do several of these things. So maybe I'll start a company and then a lab in academia and see how that goes.
And what is your PhD in now? What are you researching?
Yeah, so I'm working in Professor Shankar Balasubramanian's lab. So he has 2 labs, one in the chemistry department at the University of Cambridge, one in the Cancer Research UK Cambridge Institute. And there we really focus on epigenetics and sequencing technologies. So he developed the first next generation sequencing methodology that was very cheap, very efficient, and scalable to actually determine the bases in your DNA. So he invented the Solexa technology. So now it's used all over the world in hospitals, clinics, GP practices, and labs. And that set the basis for the next years of the lab's research. So we are developing technologies. So myself, I'm developing a technology actually, an epigenomic profiling method. So we describe what the epigenome is. One of my 2 projects is to develop a method to quantify how many cells in a population, such as a cancer tissue, a cancer sample, have a protein or modification in a specific position in the DNA. So there are ways to map. For example, if you have a favorite protein, you can now map with various technologies, where is it in the DNA in your cell? But you can't say, where is it so at this position, how many cells in the sample have this protein at this position? It takes some time to get your head around it, but it could actually have a big impact in science. Because imagine you can say 99% of these cancer cells have this protein bound to this position, or only 1% have this protein bound, and this drug affects 99% or 1% of the cells at this position. That can help you to prioritize research topics, projects, and drugs, right? That's project number 1. And then I'm going to apply that to my aging and rejuvenation project. So we're looking at a novel feature that hasn't been explored in aging and rejuvenation, but there are hundreds of links to aging. So we anticipate that it's going to be a causal factor, or at least that it can be therapeutically targeted in aging. So I'm actually taking skin fibroblasts from female donors, healthy female donors of a range of ages from 20 to 100. And they're twins, or like in different generations, even 4 generations, or the same person who donated skin samples at different time points. So I'm mapping this new feature that hasn't been explored in aging. And then I'm looking how that compares with other features. By feature, I mean a molecule in the cell. So we're correlating it with how other features behave at different ages. And then we're trying to see, does it change in any interesting way? Does it seem to contribute to aging, to be like a driver, a cause? And then the next part of the project is to see, does it have a causal role when you rejuvenate the cells? Because we can easily do that in the lab. It takes a few days. You can make the cell younger by adding chemicals or these Yamanaka factors. Blood transfusion is a bit difficult at this point, and then you see how these features behave, so where they move around, and then you try and get an idea of, does it seem to have a causal role in rejuvenation as well? And then you can start to manipulate the cells. You can, for example, remove the feature or add more of the feature, and you see, does rejuvenation, so age reversal, is it improved or is it worsened? Does it not work anymore? Because imagine, if I take away the feature we're interested in, and then the cell doesn't get younger, what does that mean?
That's the cause of it getting younger.
Exactly. So that means you can probably target this feature then therapeutically and then make the cell younger. So that's the idea. We like, the hope is to find a new therapeutic, and then that will be part of the toolkit with many other labs inventions to make a human younger.
And okay, I was just not so okay. Yeah, makes sense. So if you just find what is the problem in the cell, what is the cause of making it younger, you can maybe replicate it and then put it to other cells. I was thinking, like, what animal close to us lives the longest?
So close to us.
Like mammals or any, like, is there any one we can look at?
Well, you have the naked mole rat lives extremely long for its size and genome and family. It can live up to 40 years, while mice and rats live a few years, right? It's widely studied, and it almost doesn't get cancer. Its mortality risk almost doesn't go up as it ages, but it does age. Then you have the bowhead whale, lives quite long. Turtles. Some birds, some bats can live a long time. People are studying those. Some fish. So people are studying those, but the most common ones are worms and flies, which are short-lived because they take a short time to study.
Yeah, because then you can see what works in a few years, or maybe a few weeks if it's a worm. Yeah.
But yeah, of course, if we find a therapeutic potential, like target in the cells that I'm studying, so I'm looking at some folding of the DNA, okay? Some DNA secondary structures. That's the feature I'm looking at. And then if we see that is a therapeutic target, of course we have to study it in animal models as well to see if it's a viable therapeutic target.
Yeah, so
that would be mice or worms or flies, probably.
Yeah. It's a very fast-growing field, exploding everywhere. And why are you in Copenhagen now?
Yeah, so I'm here. Well, it's partly for fun, because my research is very fun, and then it's partly for career, because we had to meet other aging scientists, a lot of aging scientists from all over the world, for the aging research drug and discovery meeting, ARDD. It's the biggest pharmaceutical aging conference in the world. There are going to be lots of companies, labs, pharmaceutical industries, industry companies, and they're all going to come present their research or company projects, and we're going to discuss the latest advances. So this is an annual thing. So
and always in Copenhagen?
Yes, always in Copenhagen.
It's very nice, and a lot of people don't even know about it.
Yeah.
Maybe next year I'll go all days. This year I'll probably only go a few days. Is there anything else you think we should talk about, or you think we're gone through a lot?
I think. Well, it's always interesting to discuss some of the things that the normal average person can do, because that's the most common question that an aging scientist gets. Like it's all good and exciting with the research, but it can be a bit long to wait a few years or a decade. Some people are impatient, so some people ask me, how do I know what kind of lifestyle intervention I should do, what supplements I should take? So if you're interested, I could maybe say a few words about it.
Definitely. I tried to ask you before, but you are more like, all these research are more exciting than. But definitely, I would love to hear also personally.
Yeah, I can tell you some of the principles that I picked up. So generally, people, I think, believe a little bit too much in what they hear and what they say. So the things I incorporate into my life, it's almost always something based on primary research articles. Of course, that's not accessible to everyone. So then I mean like publications that scientists write after they do experiments in the lab, and they do it many times to actually try and get closer to the true result. So for example, a company or a doctor or a nutritionist or a health expert or influencer, all of these people, they might say, oh, I'm taking this product, I'm taking this molecule, I'm doing this exercise because it increases your testosterone, whatever, or it makes your skin nicer, it makes it younger, it has all these health effects. It reduces your risk of cancer. But often they have no papers to refer to, no primary research. It's usually just logic, which is not enough in science. Often something that seems completely logical, 100% logical, is not logical at all. Like it's actually wrong, right?
The body's too complex.
Yes. So people believe in all kinds of things. I think when people are looking for things to incorporate into their life, they should not even trust 100% what the scientist says, but rather trust like reputable sources, which are university articles, but even better is primary research articles or reviews, or to watch talks by scientists, which are often accessible, and preferably not listen to what companies say, because they do very biased studies to try and find some improvement in health, and you can always find some improvement in health or longevity, it seems, with any product. So there are very many articles that list things that are good for health and extending lifespan. I can also give it to you and you can add it to the podcast potentially. But some of these things are obviously limiting sugar.
It will be in the description then.
Cool. Nice. Limiting sugar as much as possible, limiting processed meat, red meat, fried food in particular.
Okay, slower. First, start again. I was not following. So.
Okay. So some of the things that I'm quite careful about following. Not always, of course, because you need to enjoy life, and when you're socializing, you don't have to do all this, of course. But limiting sugar seems to be very important.
Mm-hmm.
And processed food.
What is processed food?
So processed food is food that is manipulated in some way. Usually it's added a lot of salt to it, or preservatives and sugar, and it's modified in such a way that it makes it less healthy. Sometimes it increases the damage in cells. So that would be usually an industrial thing, such as a pizza that you just heat in the oven, or a hamburger from a restaurant. Usually this is fried as well. They put in a lot of molecules that we don't know are safe, and many of them we know are safe, not safe, like carcinogenic. So if you want to be on the safe side, then eat whole foods, little salt, little sugar, a lot of plants, a lot of fruits and berries, legumes like berries, like beans and lentils, seeds, nuts, and then preferably not too much food with a high glycemic index. So things that increase your blood sugar a lot, such as white bread or buns, bakery things. Myself, I try and avoid bread as much as possible, these things. And then exercise almost as much as you can.
Okay, a lot of good diet suggestions actually, because I do agree. As from what I've researched, I found the same things. But what you kind of skipped a big one. Like, what about meat, fish, but
sure.
even like beef and things? Yeah,
there are more. Yeah, I was actually thinking about going to my list as well as we speak, because it's hard to remember it all, right?
Yeah, just do that.
But yes, I do eat fish. What fish you eat also matters. Tuna, for example, has a high accumulation of metals because it's on the top of the food chain.
Yeah, heavy metals.
I try to not eat much tuna. And fish is very important to take omega-3. Fish cod oil is recommended. And to eat seafood, yeah, certainly. But be aware of the plastic content and the metal content. I eat fish a few times a day. A few times a week, sorry. Yeah. And meat, yes. So red meat clearly increases the risk of cancer, okay? But if you want to be vegan and vegetarian, then it's important to read about what you actually need to get in terms of nutrients and food sources. Many people get deficiencies because they don't think about it. They don't take blood tests, vitamins, supplements. So to be a vegetarian and vegan, that seems to be beneficial, but you need to do it the right way, and it's not hard at all. It doesn't take much time. Just need to make some good habits. But so for meat, it should be limited. It seems it's a difficult debate. Some scientists stay out of it. I eat meat sometimes. In a week, I just have meat like alone for a meal, maybe a few times, maybe 3 times, and then when I'm socializing in a party or with people or colleagues and they serve meat, I eat it. But I try to eat organic meat, not processed too much. So just pure meat, like minced meat or chicken, preferably.
There's also a lot of people going carnivore, like where they
Yes.
only eat meat. And like I've also heard that meat is bad, but also people say it's good. And there's some studies that say it's good, as far as I know. Some studies say it's bad. But I'm just like, I've seen quite a few people go total carnivore, and of course they go into ketosis and everything. That must also be beneficial. But they generally report that they become in a very good health state. But of course, there's not lots of energy in it, so they lose all their fat. They become like only bone and muscle.
Sure. Yeah, it's like it's hard to discuss the major food sources, so fat versus carbohydrates versus proteins, because studies don't really go over a lifetime. So if you eat a carnivore diet, you don't know how your health span is going to be. But if you look at model organisms, if you restrict amino acid content, if they eat less meat, then they live longer, right? And they're healthy for longer.
Okay.
So someone might argue that if you limit meat, then you will be healthier for longer, live longer. And that could make sense, because if you have amino acids and a lot of protein, you will build, and there will be an anabolism in the cells. They will be active and proliferate and grow, and then you will have less repair. But then if you have more muscle, the good muscle will secrete good molecules. So there are pros and cons, and the same with carbohydrates. I limit carbohydrates because based on all the papers I've read, it seems that that's a good guess for extending health span and lifespan, but it's not written in stone. It's still many questions need to be clarified. But fat and cholesterol doesn't seem to be as bad as people have claimed and scientists have claimed. So there's no reason to stay away from good fat sources necessarily.
So generally, also what I've found out, like not eat too much carbohydrates. It's not like they're the devil, but most people's diets is like 80% carbohydrates. It's probably better that it's 20% and then 50% fat and then I don't know 30% protein or something. What is the best like if you should put percent on it?
Well,
that's also what Brian Johnson does. He doesn't eat lots of carbohydrates either.
That's true, exactly. It's a common thing. And that's largely based on model organism studies as well. Yeah, it's difficult to set a percentage on it. But I can talk a little bit about what I do. So, as you say, many people eat sugary food. There's so much sugar in the food. I don't see the point, because I don't even think sugar-free food tastes any worse. I think sugar doesn't add much taste in food anyway, and it's very detrimental. It's one of the biggest drivers of aging, it seems. So I would just try and avoid it. So, for example, in cereals or in bread, even there is sugar, right? And the lighter the carbohydrates are, like light pasta, the worse it is for the health in many cases. So if you're eating carbs, it's a good idea to eat whole grain. So the darker pasta, the darker whole porridge, for example. So if you're eating porridge, it should preferably be the whole grain and not like chopped up, exactly. Yeah, and then people eat quite a lot of the same food. It should be varied, preferably. And if you eat varied food like fruits and berries and different kinds of good whole food, like eat a carrot and eat a bell pepper and an avocado, and then you're going to be less hungry, so you don't care too much about eating that chocolate or ice cream, right? I drink coffee 2 times a day. I drink matcha tea 1 time a day, not after 3 because then it can mess up with sleep. And I take cocoa powder in the coffee.
In your coffee?
Yes.
Yeah,
it's tasty.
I also drink nearly every day a strong cacao, like 100% cocoa.
Right.
And then in some water and then a bit of milk.
That's good. Yeah, I don't drink milk, but I drink a lot of water. I take some sleep supplements that Huberman recommended. Mark Huberman. You can find them on his webpage. I take a lot of vitamins and minerals and some drugs. I try to eat organic, plant-based. If I eat sweets, I try to eat them sugar-free. And I try to stand much during the day. When I work, I stand and read like every other hour. Walk when I can. Run every other day. Go to the gym every other day. I take blood tests frequently, health tests. Monitor my weight, blood pressure sometimes. And then, yeah, there's not much.
What drugs do you take?
Sorry?
What drugs do you take?
I'll come back to it in a second. And then, then there's alcohol, which should be limited. Some people think that some alcohol is good, but let's make it clear. Any alcohol is going to be detrimental, but I'm not saying that.
So wine is not good, like
no.
Dark.
It's a net negative. Even 1 sip, okay, one teaspoon isn't a net negative. It has some good effects. It can even make you more creative, more happy, more social, right? It can help you forget about everyday life, but it's detrimental for health. But it's very important to have fun, right, and be social as well. But don't drink alcohol for the health benefits. That's the
okay. So like a glass of wine. I've just heard that wine is just like it's very old berries, and when things become old and they start to rot, they different things that are healthy starts to get produced.
Yeah, so stressed vegetables or old vegetables have some good molecules, yes. And in wine you have some, but it's so little.
Okay.
Very little. It's not worth it. Yeah. Because you can get that through other means as well. Okay. We're getting there. In terms of oil, for frying things, I use coconut oil or olive oil, but coconut seems to be the best one.
Oh, you should go closer.
Sorry. And eating oil seems to be good.
So olive oil for eating, and coconut oil for frying.
Preferably, yes.
And why choose those two?
Because you generate less free radicals and bad molecules when you fry with coconut oil, because it's saturated, very saturated in terms of the fat type. If you use rapeseed or sunflower oil, those they create more free radicals. So
those are
more risky. Yeah, it's bad for.
And then olive oil for not frying, because olive oil is somehow healthy.
Yeah, well, you can use olive oil. It's coconut oil seems to be better, but olive oil.
Yeah, but not for frying, but just for eating.
Yeah.
Actually,
there are some studies that have shown that olive oil has some detrimental health effects as well, so it's worth looking into. But generally, people who live very long times, very many years, they eat a lot of olive oil and fish and vegetables, like the Mediterranean diet and the Japanese diet. So it doesn't seem to be a big deal. It's not like one food product is going to make or break.
No.
It's the net benefit. Yeah. So, I also take pea protein powder. Make sure they get enough protein. I eat eggs. The vegetables that I try to get a lot of include broccoli and spinach, beans, and I eat nuts, cashew, almonds, sometimes cabbage, things like that. Yeah, 3 eggs per day, avocados, bell peppers, kale, carrots. These are the things I try to eat a lot of. And in terms of berries, then blue and raspberries seem to be some of the more healthy ones. Salmon and cod seem to be very, very good. And then in terms of fruits, I eat oranges most of the time and apples. Actually, it can be a good idea to eat fruits with a low glycemic index. So, for example, bananas and grapes, they have very high glycemic index. So I steer away from those. Potatoes have a high glycemic index. I steer away from those when I can. And then
especially warm potatoes, I've heard. So like when potatoes cool off, the index, well, how do you say it? Glycemic index falls when potatoes become cold compared to warm, because the chains, they become stronger or longer or something. So the body has more difficult time breaking it down.
Yeah, no, I wasn't aware.
No, I learned that from my dad. Yeah.
Okay, cool. It's worth looking into. Yeah, but really, you can test these things by having a continuous glucose monitor.
Yeah, but my dad, he has diabetes, so he can always check. So what, and he says like things like grapes. You don't think about it. Grapes have a high index, definitely.
Exactly.
Yeah, so much sugar, but they taste good. I love grapes.
Yeah, I agree. Some of the unhealthy food are really good. And then a lot of spices, turmeric, for example, limit salt. Yeah, we're getting there. We can soon get to the drugs and supplements. I know you're waiting for them.
I am.
Avocados are a really good choice. I try to stay away from sausages, food from internal organs. Like I don't eat gut, bacon, those things, or raw food.
But they're also very processed, yeah.
Yes, hermetized food. Unless you check that the hermetized container doesn't have BPA and some other harmful molecules, because often they have BPA. So it's better to buy food in other containers. And then I use normally an Aura ring and a Whoop to help me with planning exercise and sleep. And it can predict also how much you should sleep and exercise, and if you're getting sick, for example, if you should take it easy.
Oh yeah, it can predict if you're getting sick or how much you should sleep. They're getting better and better, those devices, aren't they?
Yes, exactly. And they can also give you an estimation of what is the optimal bedtime, for example. And it gives you scores. It's quite fun. And then you can dim red lights 2 to 3 hours before bedtime. That's a good idea. I recommend looking at Huberman's protocol.
It's good.
A few hundred words in an article. Yeah, it's very good. I follow that. So,
and do you recommend the ring to measure? Ring? Yes. Yeah, or a watch?
So they measure mainly the same things, but yeah. Well, if they're going to be any commercial conflicts based on what I say, I don't know. But I would tend towards having the watch if I had to choose one. But having both is the best. They complement each other.
Okay, they complement each other. Okay, nice.
But they measure different things. But with the watch, I get more detailed information.
Yeah.
Especially about bedtime and things like that. About the phases of the sleep. Sleep is very important. Yes. Okay, so for supplements and drugs, I don't have time to mention them all, I guess, but some of them include taurine.
Taurine.
Yes.
Okay. My dad takes taurine as well. Taurine falls. The older you get, you have less taurine in your blood. Taurine is the thing you get from energy drinks. Yes. Why is taurine considered good?
It extends health span and lifespan in model organisms.
Which is mice and things like it.
Yeah, worms. So again, it's not shown in humans, but how can you show it in humans yet? Like, there haven't been clinical trials that I'm aware of.
But it's safe. They've used it for the last 50 years.
Exactly. So that's the thing. So the same thing with creatine. I take it because it's safe, although the effects haven't been
Demonstrated
like
in humans.
completely. Well, there are health effects, yes, but on lifespan we don't know. But you can make educated guesses. If it's safe, then like you have to take some risks. Like as Peter Attia says in his book Outlive, which I recommend to read actually, even for the general population, we shouldn't stay away from risks, especially when it comes to health span and lifespan. If you want to do something about your health span and lifespan, you need to take some risks, right? You need to do more than what your doctor tells you. Your doctor's job is to keep you relatively healthy and happy, not necessarily in the future so much, or like the far future, but
And especially here in Denmark, the doctor doesn't want to use too much money, so he's always thinking about how can I try to make you happy enough and not use too much money and push this structure, the healthcare structure too much, because the government pays. So.
Exactly. Yeah, we can't blame the doctor system.
No.
It's the system, right?
Yeah. I always have to convince the doctor if I want to get something. Like I cannot get my blood test. There's no option in Denmark.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, you have to fight for it.
Yeah.
Worth it. Or you have to have money to buy it. Yeah, no, the doctors are not necessarily trained too much to do preventive care, in terms of slowing down aging or preventing diseases or doing all the right choices. Generally, diet advice is generalized. So the things I've said today, they might seem extreme, right? Because almost no one does it. And you don't see this in newspaper articles or advice from universities or hospitals or doctors or health or nutrition experts. Because they averaged the diet advice based on what people eat and their behavior and what people can do. So when people give exercise advice as well, it's sometimes 10 minutes a day is fine. Yeah, but what does that mean? Like if you exercise 3 hours per day, like for every hour you exercise more in a week, you add on many months to your life. Like if you do that every year, there are these amazing statistics on it. So generally, the better you do in terms of exercise and diet, the more benefit you get. And if you just do what is recommended for the general public, such as eat a little bit less red meat. Okay, but yeah, if you cut out red meat, then maybe you would live 5 years longer, right? So we need to be critical.
So taurine is definitely
Yes.
a go-to. Yeah, my dad says that too. But I also thought kind of I will first do it maybe a bit later in my life, because as far as my father said, he's also researched it quite a lot. It's like my levels are quite good now because I'm young, but when I get older, they will fall. So it's more beneficial the older you get to take.
Sure, but then you can think that, what if you prevent that decline? So we're going to lose muscle when we get older. If we get older, if we don't get age reversal therapies in time. But then what if you have more muscle to start off with? Then you're going to lose less, right? So the younger you are, the most important. You can argue that it's more important to do the right things when you're young, because then you stop the snowball from rolling so much. Because then you have less damage to start with, so you will have less damage when you get older, because it's an exponential thing. You know what I mean?
Yeah, okay, I'll buy taurine. You convinced me. I see.
And then vitamin D3.
Very important.
Cod oil, cod liver oil, B12.
What? Okay, this is just omega-3.
Yes.
Okay.
Iodine. I take vitamin C.
Iodine. What is iodine?
It's in Danish it's called jod.
Jod. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah,
We put it in salt in Denmark.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then calcium. I don't even remember everything I take.
Magnesium.
Yes, I do take magnesium. Yeah, a few other things, and then I'm gonna look into many other drugs and supplements in the next few months and add it to my protocol.
So next time we talk, you're just like ding 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 ding.
Exactly. Then I can give you a list. Yes.
Nice.
I'm gonna look deeply into it.
Yeah.
Right.
But well, thank you for coming. We talked through a lot of things.
Yeah, it was.
I thought it was very interesting.
Same.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Thanks.
it was. Thank you for this good conversation.
Yeah.
And hopefully we'll have another one in the future.
Definitely
And
when
I can
you
update you.
Yeah, perfect, man.
Yeah. So, yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you.